I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Outdoor adventure won't wait for engine problems. Things like hard starts, rough performance, and lost fuel economy are often caused by fuel gum and varnish buildup. Seafoam can help your engine run better and last longer. You simply pour a can into your gas tank. Hunters and anglers rely on Seafoam to keep their engines running the way it should the entire season. So pick up a can of Seafoam today at your local auto parts store or visit seafoamworks.com to learn more.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 101. Today in the show, we're joined by Jeff Sposito to discuss the newly launched and very exciting new organization, 2% for Conservation. Alright, so before we kick off the show, I do need to ask you a favor. Please bear with us through the first 10 minutes of this episode, as we had some serious technical difficulties trying to record our intro segment, and literally record it 3 or 4 times over the past 2 days, and every single time we had these issues with sound quality. We're still trying to figure out what's going on, but for this week, I had to decide either to scrap this whole intro segment or leave it in with some poor audio sections scattered throughout. So I decided to do that, as I thought you'd probably still enjoy getting to hear these stories despite the few glitches. So thanks for your understanding, and now to the show. All right, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by Sitka Gear. And today we've got a great show for you, as we're joined by Jeff Sposito, the founder of the brand new and very exciting 2% for Conservation. A conservation organization that I think has the potential to make a very big difference in the hunting and fishing world. And I'm stoked that Jeff's going to be joining us today to talk about this new organization, what inspired him to dive into this project, what all goes into starting a conservation organization, and how all of us hunters can get more involved in taking up this type of cause in our own lives. But before we get to all of that, Dan and I do have some exciting updates from the field to share. We have been doing a little turkey hunting, right, Dan?
That's a fact, Jack.
And we've actually done a half-decent job of it.
Hey, I can't complain. You killed, did you get 1 or 2?
I got 1. You can only kill 1 here in Michigan, but I can very briefly, quickly give you my overview. I had 5 really tough days of hunting in Michigan, where the birds weren't talking, or I was really bad at calling, or something went wrong the first 5 days and just couldn't quite make it happen. I was out there with a bow trying, like we talked about a couple weeks ago. I thought I'd try to up the challenge factor. So I took my bow out and was waiting for a big mature bird, and things just didn't quite go the way I'd want. So then Saturday came around, and I was getting a little nervous because my dad's coming in a couple days to hunt, and I was only going to have a few more days to hunt after that. So I figured if I don't get something in the freezer now, I might not get a bird at all. So I took the gun out Saturday morning. I changed up my strategy, went to a different spot in the farm, and long story short, I ended up killing a really nice gobbler, a couple hours after daylight. So it was one of those hunts where it was one of those days, really, where everything was going right. The 2 days before, the birds were silent, nothing was going. But this day, everything was talking. They were responding to the calls, and put one on the ground. So that was my turkey hunt. I got a Michigan bird. Now in a week and a half, I'm going to Ohio. But you, my friend, you laid or were part of laying two down, right?
Right. Let's see. So typically what happens is I've been hunting with my wife for 5 years. We do this thing tradition. We call it turkey camp, and it's where me and my wife and my stepdad go hunting, and my mom kind of gets the raw end of the deal. She gets to watch the kids, so which she loves. She does her grandma thing, but she watched the kids while Sarah and I went hunting, and my stepdad. Here's how my stepdad hunts. He goes into the blind before light, and he sits in the blind all day long. That's how I can't do that. It would be impossible. There would have to be like a flat screen TV in there for me to do that. But me and my wife do a little bit more run and gun, and although luckily this year we really didn't have to. So Thursday I head out of work, and I leave early, set up a blind in a pasture. Starts raining. I drive around the section. I see like 25 to 30 birds. I saw about 7 to 10 strutting toms, and the rest were hens. So I knew that there were turkeys in the area, and that made me really excited. Fast forward to Friday morning, we get into the stand a little bit early. So we had to fight some cattle getting in, and we thought the cattle had left, and the turkeys were responding. Like every time I touched my call, they were gobbling. And even when there was a period of time where I was just not even calling, and they were going bananas in the timber. So my blind was set up in the middle of a cattle pasture under a big old oak tree, and the birds were in the timber line about 250 yards away. They started gobbling. I was calling. They came in. They saw my decoys. This is the abbreviated version. And they held up. Well, I looked behind me, and the cattle had worked their way back into the area, and they were pretty spooked or pretty hesitant of coming closer to the decoys. And they headed down this valley and up the other side and went into a different part of the pasture. Well, they were gobbling the whole time, so I knew where they were at. My wife and me made a stalk on them. I got busted by a hen. They flew away. Fast forward, then instead of going back out, I don't know. This year I was just kind of up to do what my wife was ready to do, because I knew that we were going to have great weather the entire morning, the entire weekend, which means that they were responding, and they were going to respond. So I didn't go back out. We went and tried another little piece of property back at the house, 11, and then we did what my wife wanted to do, which was go visit a winery, and I tasted some local wines, which were delicious. And fast forward to Saturday morning, and I'm not joking you, this is exactly how it went. Walk blind, wait 20 minutes, heard the first gobbles at about 5:45. Birds flew down at about 6, and between 6 and 6:05, my wife shot the turkey. So nice. A tom, 3 jakes, and a hen all flew out of the tree within 20 yards. The jakes and the tom started strutting towards the decoys. They stepped out behind this little thorn bush, and my wife just dropped it right in her tracks. Boom. Nice. One shot. It barely even flopped. So that was a pretty fast hunt. And the rest of the day, I could have probably went out and tried to get another bird, but I was happy for her. I knew that I had to clean it and, package it and get it in the freezer. So I took care of that kind of business, and did some mushroom hunting, went on a 4-wheeler ride with the kids, spent a lot of time with family that day. My stepdad comes back, and he was struggling with the farm that he was on with a guy riding a dirt bike up and down the road. And on the farm, and there's other hunter he said was calling for 1 hour straight. Yikes. So yeah, so not a lot of activity on the farm my stepdad was hunting. So I was like, hey man, I got a spot if you want to come with me. I don't have a blind, I don't have anything. You're gonna have to sit underneath of a tree, and I'll back up behind you and call. I mean that's how I cut my teeth on turkey hunting. And he's like, yeah, okay, let's do it. So we park our truck, sun's starting to come up, and we walked to the field where the CRP met the timber, and started doing a little calling. Heard some distant gobbles, so we walked down this cut 2 track, and I set him underneath of a tree that my wife killed a turkey out of what would have been 2 years ago. And I put decoys out in front of him, probably 20 yards. I backed up behind him about 20 yards, started calling, and I pulled in a tom from a long ways away. He was gobbling every time I called. And then I started hearing the thum, boom, the noise that they make when they strut. And 2 more toms come on a show. I couldn't see it, according to my a whole bunch of bushes to kind of, so I had a little bit of movement. The one tom came in to our right, and he busted my stepdad turning his head to look, because he shut up. He stopped gobbling when he located our position. And then he came in. My stepdad turned his head ever so slightly. That tom took off running. And the 2 toms that were strutting to the left of us, I called one in. There was a hen. I broke the one tom off, and my stepdad shot him before 6:30 in the morning. So that was a long story for a very short period of time.
You've perfected that. Two short hunts, 2 long stories, Dan. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I know. But it was fun. I mean, although I didn't get a bird or chance at a bird, I was just happy that the people. I mean, the thing I like about turkey hunting, and I think we talked about this in the one of the last episodes, was it's less pressure. It's more about fun and enjoying nature. And for me, it's about spending time with family. And I got to do all those things. And even though I didn't get a bird, I got an archery tag so I can hunt until May 4th or 14th. 14th, I think. So I have plenty of time left to try to get one with a bow. Other than that, my season's a success based off of what's already happened.
Yeah, I'd say so. That's pretty cool to be able to do that with a couple family members and have a good fun weekend like that. Sounds like you had a good couple days, my friend.
When are you heading to Ohio?
Well, my dad is coming down to turkey hunt with me this coming weekend in Michigan, so I'm going to guide him for a couple days. And then the following weekend, I'm going to Ohio. So I'll be the guide this weekend, then hunting just about a week and a half from now. So hopefully there'll be some more good turkey hunting stories to come from me here soon. But I think it'll be pretty good. From what I talked with a legendary turkey hunter, Ray I. He was on our 100% Wild podcast today, and he's been saying across the country it's been a lot different than most years because of this later spring in a lot of places. A lot of the toms are henned up already, and so he said that, the later you get into the season, the better it's going to be, supposedly. He knows a lot more than I do, so I couldn't tell you why. But he seemed to think that the best is yet to come. So I'm hoping that'll be the case here, and that my rough first 5 days will be gone, and things will continue to be like they were on Saturday.
Well, good luck, Mark Kenyon.
Thank you, Dan Johnson. And with that, we are needing now to get our guest on the line. We got to give Jeff a call, so let's take a quick break for a word from our partners at Sitka, and then we'll talk to Jeff about 2% for conservation. So last week we began our new segment with Sitka Gear, in which we're sharing incredible Sitka stories. And today we've got just such a story. In fact, a turkey story from Jason Mears. And we're going to kick this one off at a point in Jason's hunt where he was about to call it quits and head back to work, as it seemed like the birds he was hunting were henned up and heading away. But just when he thought the hunt was over, he spotted the birds much closer than he thought and set up in a less than ideal situation.
I'm in the middle of a field. I have nothing to hide behind other than to lay in this 3-foot tall high grass. So basically I laid there on my back with my gun barrel between my knees, hoping that as these birds worked around the side of the hill that they would be, 20, 30 yards out in front of me, and I would basically pop up like I was in a goose blind and shoot one of them.
So Jason waited there, laying in the grass, for 15 minutes, until finally a redhead popped up, heading his way.
As they came down, they actually came up within 6 feet of the end of my gun barrel. And basically I either knew that I was either going to miss this turkey because the pattern was so tight, or I was going to drop him right where he was. And as he stepped in front of my barrel, I squeezed the trigger and down he went. The other one flew off, and extremely exciting hunt because, I mean, I've never had the opportunity to actually shoot a turkey at that range. 6 feet is just ridiculous in my opinion. So you talk about the heart ready to bust out of your chest because either had one option: you can get the turkey, or you're gonna make him a heck of a lot smarter for the rest of the season.
Luckily for Jason, this bird would not have a chance to get any smarter. What a hunt. And on this hunt, Jason was wearing Sitka's early season whitetail pants and core lightweight top. If you'd like to learn more about Sitka, you can visit sitkagear.com. And now, back to the show. All right, well, due to unforeseen circumstances and technical difficulties, we have lost Dan Johnson, but we have added Jeff to the line. So welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you, Mark. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I apologize for the lengthy technical issues we've had today trying to make this happen, but I'm glad at least you and me are finally here chatting. I briefly introduced you at the beginning in 2% for conservation, but really high level, I'd love to kick things off just hearing a little bit more about who you are. For those that aren't familiar, what are you doing today? What's your background a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So I currently work for Sitka Gear out of Bozeman, Montana. I've been with Sitka for going on 7 years now. I started back in 2009 with them. I do sales and marketing there, focused on our guide and outfitter pro deal programs and our e-commerce and online sales. And then my nights and weekends and kind of a pet project side job have started 2% for conservation. So it's been a fun process.
Yeah, I bet. And that's going to be the main gist of our conversation is going to be all about that process. But I also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you are a hunter too, right?
Yeah, heck yeah, I am. No, a hunter and a fisherman, more so a hunter than a fisherman, but I enjoy all things outdoors, but I am truly a passionate bow hunter more than anything. I've been hunting my whole life and kind of progressed through the hunting cycle, and I loved bow hunt anything from elk, deer, bears, anything really.
And word on the street is that you're going to Alaska soon. Is that true?
I do. I leave in less than 48 hours for Alaska for a brown bear hunt. That's actually a really cool story. I won the brown bear hunt last fall in a raffle. So totally not only a once in a lifetime bucket list hunt, but one of those situations where it was a complete surprise on how it came to happen. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped, man. I got a lot of packing yet to do still, but we'll get there.
So what? So are you going with a firearm or bow? First off, is my question.
I'm doing the classic bring both weapons.
Yep.
I'm going to give holster. I'm going to give it the good college try to kill one with a bow. I really would like to get an opportunity to shoot one with a bow and give it my damnedest, but you never know how that goes, and I don't want to pass up the opportunity. So if we just can't get the right situation, I'm not opposed to laying some lead too.
Mm-hmm. And this is a coastal brown bear, right?
It is, yeah. It's brown bear out of it's a boat hunt out of Sitka, Alaska, and we'll be hunting primarily the ABC Islands. So wow. It's a part of the country I've never been. So there's many layers of excitement there for me to see a new part of the country and obviously hunt an animal that is truly a once in a lifetime type hunt.
Plus the potential of being 20 yards away from a 800 or 1,000 pound brown bear. That sounds like an experience too.
There's that too. Yeah, I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that I just got a little bit nervous just thinking about it. So I'm sure I'll be shaking a little bit when that scenario presents itself.
But
that's all the fun, right?
Yeah. What's your wife think about this, or your family?
That's a good question. She is. My wife is very supportive of everything I do. She is. She doesn't quite understand bear hunting with a bow in general. Mm-hmm. Nonetheless, a brown bear. She thinks that you should run away from bears. She has this picture in her mind that I'm shoot the bear with a bow, and it's going to stand up and look at me and pull the arrow out and get revenge.
Oh, man.
I've tried to reassure that that's not exactly how it happens.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, I got to give you credit. That takes a certain amount of intestinal fortitude to even go on a trip like that. It's a dream of mine too. But wow, to actually,
yeah. Well, I haven't done it yet,
it.
so we should talk again in 10 days and see how it went. But yeah, I'm pretty pumped nonetheless.
Now, have you done other Alaskan hunts before?
I have. I was fortunate enough to go 2 years ago to Kodiak mountain goat hunting.
Wow.
And that was my first hunting trip to Alaska, and that was with a good friend of mine who is a Sitka athlete, Cole Kramer,
Mm-hmm.
and we did a mountain goat hunt together, and it was a blast, man. It was all that I expected it to be and more. It was awesome.
And that was Kodiak, so you've had at least a little experience with really big bears, I guess, probably, right?
Yeah. That's where the big bears. That's the world of the big bears. We on our mountain goat hunt, we didn't have any encounters with bears. We saw a few, but yeah, I've been. I guess you could say I have been in brown bear country before.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you when you get back to hear how this adventure went. Man, that puts us whitetail hunters to shame. I'll tell you what, from the work required and the adrenaline and the nerves you've got us beat there.
Well, maybe on that, but I want to go that far. I love whitetail hunting too, and it's one of those things where growing up in the western United States, I haven't had a ton of opportunity to hunt whitetails, and every time I do, I love it, man. There's something about whitetail hunting that obviously you know more than I do, but it's awesome.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun, and I'm actually going to be combining my love for whitetails and my love for your state of Montana this coming fall. I'm actually going to I'm doing a whitetail hunt outside of Bozeman this year.
Oh, right on, man. Yeah, Montana's kind of a sleeper whitetail state. We got, we're so fortunate to have so many animals to hunt, and elk are obviously the prized possession that whitetails kind of go under the radar, and we actually have some really awesome whitetail hunting out here, so that'll be sweet.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing, and I love that part of the country so much, and I was like, you know what? I keep hearing, there's some whitetails out there. Why not give it a try? So I'm going to go out there. I'm actually living out there for a month this summer with my wife, so I'm going to do a little scouting out there, and then hopefully find some public land or get permission on something and give it a shot in September with a bow. So that's my game plan.
Yeah. Are you going to hunt elk too, I hope?
I am going to hunt elk. Well, I think I'm going to be hunting elk. It's a little bit up in the air, but if I do, it may not be in Montana. It might be in Idaho.
Got it.
So those plans are still up in the air, but it looks like I'm going to have a long chunk of time away from home out in the mountains, one way or the other. So I'm looking forward to that.
Cool, man.
Yeah, I've been hunting elk the past few years in Idaho and have definitely gotten that in my blood. So
nice.
I imagine if I grew up out there, I would be a complete elk nut. No doubt about it.
Yeah, well, I hope the whitetail hunt goes good out here. We'll have to connect up way out here for sure, because that'll be awesome.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I've got serious. Well, like I mentioned, we're going out there for the summer, so I already have summeritis. In about a month, we're moving out west, so I'm just like itching to get out there and start hiking and fishing and scouting for the hunts, and it's gonna be good. But I guess kind of related to that, Jeff, it's kind of funny. One of the reasons why I've got such summeritis and why I'm thinking about going out west so much is because I've been doing a bunch of reading about kind of conservation history and about the wildlife and what it used to be like in different parts of the country back 150, 200 years ago. I read a really, really great book called I think it's called The American Serengeti.
Oh man, I just listened to a podcast with Steven Ranella and the Meat Eater, and he had what's the author's name of that? I'm spacing it now. Flores?
Yes, Dan Flores.
Yeah, that podcast was amazing, man. It was so interesting to me.
Yes, exactly. I heard that podcast and I was fascinated, and I immediately went on Amazon, bought his book, and I read it in the last 2-3 days, and it was terrific. I mean, one of my favorite books I've read, both from a just purely interesting and fascinating just to hear about the wildlife, but also from as a hunter, understanding what was here before we arrived, and then kind of what some of our ancestors' actions led to, and then I guess also than what some of our ancestors did after that to return us to a time of relative plenty when it comes to wildlife and wild places. So it was really interesting, fascinating book. Highly recommend anyone read it. But the point of me bringing it up is that it has just got me re-jazzed and re-pumped up and excited about trying to make a difference from a conservation standpoint moving forward. I think we talked once, I don't know when this was, Jeff, but just talked about kind of like, I think both of our journeys as a hunter, right? You become a hunter and you go through this journey as a hunter, but then I think at some point a lot of us end up realizing how much this means to us, how much wildlife, wild places, the opportunity to hunt, how much that means to us, and eventually it leads us to want to give back in some way. And so I'm definitely at that place in my life where I'm trying to find ways to do that. And from the previous conversations we've had, it sounds like you have recently been in a place like that too, which has led to this organization, 2% for Conservation. So I guess I'm curious, Jeff, before we actually go into what this organization is and what you actually did, I kind of want to hear about your journey that I kind of highly glossed over in my case. But how did you end up being inspired to try to do more or to do something like this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I, as all your life experiences kind of create who you are, I haven't spent a whole lot of time thinking about it, so it's really an interesting exercise to do. But I grew up in Northern California, and in a family that was sustained from commercial cattle ranching, which gave us the benefit of having access to hunt on private land, and everybody in my family, it was just kind of a tradition, right? My grandfather loved to hunt, and he was a hunter, and all my uncles and cousins. So it was just kind of what we did. So from a young age, I had opportunities to hunt. Where we were in Northern California, we had black-tailed deer and a lot of wild pigs. So I really grew up deer hunting, but really pig hunting became such an awesome opportunity, and that's what kind of got me into bow hunting, because it's a year-round season, and there's just tons of them, and through that, then from circumstances that were just nothing other than lucky, I ended up getting a job out of college working at Sitka when it was still a very small company, and just getting off the ground. And through my role at Sitka, I really got connections and started to learn more about conservation organizations. And I'd always known of of RMEF, and generally through my family and my experiences hunting, I knew what conservation organizations did, but didn't have a deep understanding of the impact they had. And through my work at Sitka, I really started to learn more about what that was and how important they were, and the challenges that they had from a fundraising standpoint, and really how much work it went in, and the passion and the time that the organizations depended on to be successful. And I think through that journey, that's kind of, high level, real quick story of really where my mind has evolved into thinking about what we can do more as an industry, as individuals, as businesses to support these conservation groups.
Yeah, and so you got to a place where maybe you knew you wanted to do something more. I think if I remember correctly, there was a specific event or time that actually then sparked an idea for a specific type of organization. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. There was. So I think it was 2000. I could get this wrong, but I think it was 2013. QDMA, the Quality Deer Management Association, which I'm sure you're familiar with, had what they called, I think they called it at the time, the White-tailed Deer Summit, or maybe it was just the Deer Summit, but it was in Missouri. And what they did with this summit, it was really cool. They brought in a whole bunch of different key stakeholders from the hunting industry. They had a big conference generally about the state of the hunting industry, the state of conservation, and then obviously focused a bit on whitetail deer and the challenges we have, and current events and issues. And then what was cool, they broke all these different stakeholders out into groups with objectives, and we had these, I think it was 2 days worth of meetings in these stakeholder groups, which were made up of, one stakeholder group was biologists. They had one that was like media. They had one, which was the group I sat in, that was industry, and I was representing Sitka at the time. So it was a bunch of manufacturers and brands and retailers. And then they had a breakout group of hunters that they invited. So the theme was that what they wanted to do was have these different stakeholder groups brainstorm together and prioritize their top concerns or priorities that need to be addressed as an industry as a whole. And with a big learning, what kind of came out of our group as the industry group was there were a couple things, but one of the top ones that stuck with me was, what can we do as an industry, as profitable businesses relying on hunting and fishing as our consumer base? What can we do more to support conservation groups? And through that, we brainstormed some ideas and kicked it around. But that really stuck with me, and so much that on my flight home, on my travel home, I really couldn't stop thinking about it. Where it just hit home that the shoot, man, there's got to be a way, or there's got to be a mechanism or something that we could do collectively as a huge industry. I mean, you look at all the businesses in hunting and fishing across. I mean, it's a huge industry, tons of jobs, tons of revenue. What can we do underneath one umbrella as an industry to do more to support conservation? Because the reality is, if hunting and fishing were to disappear, all of our businesses wouldn't exist anymore. We wouldn't have customers. If we're selling a hunting and fishing product, we wouldn't have customers if hunting and fishing didn't exist anymore. So that was kind of that one event where that was really kind of the birth of 2% for Conservation. I went down this journey from then on of trying to figure out what the heck we could do. Is there something we could do? And where we've landed today is with this organization, 2% for Conservation.
Yeah, it's interesting. Also, coming out of that Deer Summit, you mentioned the National Deer Alliance was started.
That's right.
And I actually work with the National Deer Alliance, so both of us had something that came out of that summit, interestingly enough.
It turns out that was a profitable event that Keaton May put in, or successful. Yeah, that you're exactly right. They spawned from then. I think it was shortly after that event that they were going to form the NDA, and this was going to be kind of the organization for all that represented all deer species.
Yeah, and I can tell you from a behind-the-scenes standpoint, it has been a long and interesting road of trying to get that organization up off the ground. And I only work kind of in an ancillary type of way. I kind of consult and help with some digital things, but it's been interesting to see all that goes into building the foundation of a group like that's working with so many different stakeholders and trying to do some really big, exciting things. But I think we're now at a point that some really good, exciting stuff is coming. So I'm excited that there'll be some things happening here in the coming weeks and months. Just for those of you who've heard me talk about the NDA before, keep your eyes out. There's going to be some stuff coming that I think will be really positive for all deer and all deer hunters. So that said, I digress. Jeff, you mentioned coming out of that event, that kind of helped catalyze this idea. Tell me about the idea. Tell me about where it went from that. You're on the airplane, you're inspired, you have this idea. What happens next when you're trying to start an organization like that?
Yeah, well, at that point, I didn't really even know what the idea was. I kind of knew conceptually what the objective would be and what the problem that I thought there was an opportunity to address was. But I kind of really just started, doing a lot of Google research, right, of where there were parallels in other industries of certain concepts or certain ideas that have tried to address and approach the similar problems. And I, researched some of the ones that stand up that I remember looking at were some checkoff programs. So the agriculture industry, right, coming from my background in cattle ranching, the beef checkoff program was one that I was like, that's an interesting concept where industry businesses have come together and funded and pooled together money to launch a marketing campaign per se, right? And that's where, if you're not familiar with the beef checkoff program, but that's what created the beef it's what's for dinner campaign, right? And there's similar ones with milk, the Got Milk commercials were so popular for a while with the milk mustaches and all the different celebrities or public figures. That was a checkoff program from the dairy industry. So I did a little bit of research on those, and there were some parallels there. I also looked at, kind of the recycling campaign, which has become such a standard now, and people are so used to seeing the recycling symbol on products. There was another organization called the Rainforest Alliance that I learned about, and their focus was around, I'm probably going to screw this up, but a lot of where you see their campaigns around coffee and coffee producers and making sure that the manufacturers and producers of coffee are not destroying rainforests. But then the one organization that I came across that ended up being kind of our driver, and we learned a lot from, was 1% for the Planet. And 1% for the Planet is an organization that still exists today and is very successful, and was started by Yvon Chouinard, who's the founder of Patagonia, along with a guy named Craig Matthews, who owns a fly shop here in Montana in West Yellowstone. And the concept of their organization was that businesses would essentially do a self-imposed tax, where they would give back 1% of sales to environmental causes, back to the planet, right? Which is where their naming came from. And when I first came across 1% for the Planet and started learning more about it, the more and more I asked questions and read and researched, it made a lot of sense for the hunting and fishing community. And it was kind of that light bulb moment of holy crap, this is good. This makes a lot of sense. And I think this could have a huge impact on hunting and fishing. So that's really when I got a kickstart and some motivation on going down a specific path, rather than just kind of, having a big idea cloud.
Yeah, that's the big leap too, when you go from the idea cloud to actually the real thing, and now you can take action.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know, it just seems like such a crazy idea to think of an idea like this and then actually be able to put it in action and do it. Was that did you really think you could do it, or was it kind of this crazy idea and you thought maybe I'll tell somebody about this and they could do it, or did you just know from the get-go, yeah, I can do this?
No, I didn't know that, and I don't think I ever had not that I can speak of, I've ever had a yep, this is it, and I'm gonna do it type moment. What really happened was I started asking questions, right, with people that knew more than I did, people that had more knowledge of the industry than I did, and one of the guys that's helped me a ton down the road, that one of the first people I went to was Randy Newberg. For a couple reasons, I've known Randy. He lives here in Bozeman. We've developed a relationship over the years, and he's involved and knowledgeable in the world of conservation in a way that I am not. So he was one of the first people I just was like, hey Randy, I got a crazy idea. I want to run this off you. What do you think? And and I did that with a handful of people, and generally the response from everybody was super positive, and yeah, this makes a lot of sense. This needs to happen, right? And I think after collectively hearing that enthusiasm, from people who I respected and I thought had a good perspective on the industry and the need, that was kind of what kept my motivation going. Of okay, so now what's the next step look like? What do we have to do to move this down the path? If generally I feel confident that smart people are on board and see an opportunity for this, then how do we keep it going?
Yeah, so how do you keep it going? What happened next? I'm loving this. It's like a nonprofit entrepreneur's journey. I'm fascinated by it.
Right. Yeah. Which I'll digress for a minute, which is interesting because I've always had a desire to own my own business or start my own business, and I've always assumed it would be something that would be profitable. So to have put so much time and passion into something that will make me no money has been an interesting mental conflict in itself. But,
yeah,
but I know there's a better cause there.
it'll pay dividends in the future in different ways. It'll come back to you.
Sure. Yeah. But yeah. So next, what was cool was one of the questions I had, or what Randy came back for was Craig Matthews, this guy that started 1% for the Planet with Yvon Chouinard, lives in West Yellowstone, which is only an hour and a half drive from Bozeman. And it was like, well, heck, does anybody I know him? And Randy was like, I know some people that know him, and we it was kind of cool. We pretty much cold called him and said, hey Craig, you don't know us, but would you be willing to have lunch with us? And so we pick your brain and run something by you, and we did just that. So Randy and I drove down and met Craig in Ennis, Montana, which is about halfway between, and at that point we didn't even really have a really formalized concept yet, other than this is what we think we could do. And we sat down and had lunch with Craig, and he was super nice, helpful dude. Typical Montana, loved to fish. He owns a fly shop, so obviously loved to fish. appreciates and respects hunting and hunters. And he was more than willing to share information with us. A very philanthropic guy that generally is passionate, wants to make the world a better place, wants to help wildlife, and that was really refreshing. And that opened Randy and I's eyes to a lot of things about 1% for the Planet and the organization that we didn't realize or we didn't know. And it turns out, in hindsight, looking back, that was a very helpful conversation, and that got us down a path where we truly started working our organization and framing it around the same kind of template and business model that 1% for the Planet has. And we actually started with the working name of the organization as 1% for Conservation, which we can get into too, because as you notice now, our name is different.
Twice as good.
Twice as good, right? And that came out of a lot of feedback that we had. So we really started building the organization 1% for Conservation. We worked with a good buddy of mine, Brent, who is on the board. He's a CPA here in town. I started doing my normal Google research. I feel like I'm a Google expert, right? You can learn a lot from Google, but I don't know if it's always the best resource.
True.
But we needed to get 501c3 status from the IRS to start a nonprofit, right? That's kind of like, if you're doing a profitable business, you have to incorporate it. If you're going to start a nonprofit, you have to get a determination from the IRS that you're a legitimate 501c3. And I was like, I could do this. It's probably just a form that you got to fill out. Well, it turns out it's a lot more work than that. So I recruited my buddy Brent, who I met from sitting on the local board of a Mule Deer Foundation chapter here in Bozeman. He's the treasurer for that. And I said, hey man, any chance you want to help me figure out how to do this? Here's my idea. And I looked at the 501c3 form, and it's giant and it's daunting, and I have no clue where to start. And he said, yeah. And he essentially did helped volunteer his time to go through the process and do that. And so that was a big step. And then after that, it's a $800 fee to file that. I was kind of committed.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Right. So I took, $800 out of my savings, which my wife wasn't super stoked on, but she had faith in me. And then, from then on, I had skin in the game at least to keep it going.
Yeah, I bet. So maybe I've been kind of building the suspense here. We haven't really said too much in detail about what 2% for Conservation is exactly doing. We've kind of alluded to it a little bit, talking about 1% for the Planet, but
yep.
But now you've got this new name, 2% for Conservation, which if you want to elaborate again why you changed the name, you can. But I also would be curious just to start hearing a little bit more. Okay, so what did you end up finally settling on as to what this group is going to do?
Yeah, so twofold, right? So the problems and the issues that came out of that Whitetail Summit at QDMA were kind of twofold in my mind. It was one, how do we help fund NGOs? NGOs is an acronym for non-governmental organizations, which are all your kind of 501c3, C4 conservation groups. So they're not your state. So there's kind of two different avenues in wildlife conservation, right? There's your state and federal agencies, right? The Department of Fish and Game for each state.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the elk foundations of the world and the mule deer foundations and QDAs in the world who are non-governmental organizations, right? And so what we came out of that was, okay, how do we help get more money to those organizations? And then in my mind, secondary, it was, and this kind of comes from my experience at Sitka, and also my affinity as a consumer for certain hunting brands, is how do we provide recognition for businesses who are committed to giving back to conservation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I truly believe there's value there. There's value for a brand to market that, and there's consumers who do appreciate that. Like I would totally rather buy products from companies who are philosophically aligned with my beliefs in supporting conservation than ones who aren't.
Absolutely.
So that was kind of the big takeaways of what we're going to do. And 1% for the Planet, their model did that very well. And when I started talking about how this would fit into the hunting and fishing world, it made a lot of sense in that a business would be certified by our organization, 2% for conservation, that they do meet certain criteria. And with that certification, then they could use the logo, the 2% for conservation logo, on their products to promote their commitment to conservation to consumers. So at the highest level, that's kind of what we do as an organization, is certify that businesses do meet criteria that we define of giving back to conservation.
Okay, and so taking a step back, your template, your inspiration for this was 1% for the planet, and you might have mentioned this. If I missed, I apologize. But just to clarify what they do, the way that they qualify the brands that are part of 1% for the planet is that company needs to donate, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 1% of revenue or 1% of, is that right?
Yep, it's 1% of sales or gross revenue, however you want to define it, but it's your top line revenue, you know. So as your business's tax return, you got to report revenue, income. It's 1% of that, so it's gross sales.
Okay, so a company donates 1% of gross sales to certified NGOs that support the environment of the planet or whatever, and then they can get stamped with the 1% for the planet kind of brand, and they qualify, and hey, these, you know, that organization is qualified as, yes, they really are doing positive things for the earth, etc. So then
exactly.
So then you took this idea and said that makes a lot of sense, but you know, how can we make it better? How can we apply it to the hunting and fishing world? So how did you do that, Jeff?
Yeah, so that's right. So through my conversations and learnings with a bunch of different people and organizations, the thing that came up beyond money, right? So your 1% of sales is essentially money that's going to go help fund these conservation groups. I heard feedback that arguably time was more valuable for conservation groups than money, right? Now, some people might debate that, but the fact is time and money are the two most important things that conservation groups need to be successful in achieving their mission work, right? They need volunteers. Conservation isn't just a concept, right? Conservation is actually doing on the ground work, be it with wildlife or habitat or both, right? So yes, you need money to help fund that work, but you need volunteers to actually do the work. And that is where our second 1% comes from, and kind of the slogan that we've branded our naming convention as we mentioned, is 2% for conservation, and that is defined by committing to give back 1% of your time plus 1% of your money equals 2% for conservation. So that's kind of how we've evolved that model and that foundation that 1% for the planet built. And we believe that makes the model even more impactful and stronger for fish and wildlife conservation groups.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the idea. When I first heard about this, I genuinely got like physically excited. Like I was like, yes. I was like, this is a great idea. This makes all the sense in the world, because there are so many hunters and anglers out there who care about this type of thing, and I think that there are many companies that care about this type of thing, but to your point, I'm not sure all those companies that are actually doing good things are being recognized, and sure. I'm not sure if maybe there are some companies out there that aren't doing things that need a little bit of an additional incentive maybe to push them in the right direction, and this seems to do both of those things in a really positive way. So can we start diving into the details here? Can you tell me, for businesses, first off, how exactly do they get involved, and what does this mean for them?
Yeah, of course. So businesses, they have to meet the minimum criteria, right? And that criteria is defined by what I think we've done a pretty good job of saying is 1% of your sales. So if you give back 1% of your sales to conservation groups, that's 1/2 of the criteria. Now there's a lot of questions that have arisen from that. So what defines giving back, and what defines conservation groups are the two most needed clarification points. So giving back is we define it as if your business is foregoing proceeds for that conservation group's mission work, right? And it is the easiest way to look at it at the highest level. So that could be product donations, right? So a lot of these groups, their traditional funding mechanism is the banquets that we are all familiar with, of going to to the local or regional Mule Deer Foundation banquet, and they have a bunch of product for sale. Well, that product comes from somewhere, right? It comes from these businesses that either donate it or sell it at a lower cost, so the conservation group can resell it and raise funds. So those proceeds foregone from that for your business, that counts as a contribution to conservation. Those are hugely important and critical to the fundraising of conservation groups. Other things that count are obviously direct donations, but things that are often overlooked or are sponsorships and advertisements with conservation groups. So how conservation groups have evolved over the years to raise funds or to offer corporate sponsorships. So X business wants to work with QDMA. Well, QDMA will say, hey, yeah, this is great. We'll do a sponsorship package with you where we will give you a print ad in our magazine. We'll do an email blast. We'll try to help promote your brand as much as we can. Well, that's a contribution to conservation too. Even though it's a marketing investment for your brand, that's important for conservation groups and necessary funds for them to achieve their mission. Other things are exhibiting at a conservation group's trade show, right? Trade shows or consumer shows for some conservation groups are some of their biggest fundraising events. One that comes to mind that we at Sitka exhibit at every year is the Wild Sheep Foundation. They have a show in Reno every year, and they have everything, businesses, brands, outfitters, but a bunch of vendors. But that is a huge fundraising mechanism for them. So committing to go to that show as a business to work with them is a contribution to help them raise funds. So collectively, when you start to look at all the different things you do as a business, it becomes it's an interesting exercise, and there's a lot of opportunity for you to promote your brand through your contributions, which is a huge advantage that I think we as a hunting and fishing industry have over 1% for the planet and their target demographic. So that's 1%. That's the first part of it. You have to prove that your company gives back 1% of sales, and then the second part of it is 1% of time. And we base that off of, there's roughly 2,080 work hours in the year. So 1% of that is approximately 21 hours. And it's collectively as a business, whether you have one employee or whether you have 100 employees, collectively does your business give back 21 hours of volunteer time. And why this is so important outside of the need of conservation groups to have more volunteers and more man hours, but it gets those businesses involved, right? So I don't think it's appropriate to say it's easy to write a check, but arguably any business can just write a check, and that isn't as impactful as saying, hey, not only do we write a check, but we're going out and we're getting involved and we're doing a river cleanup project, or we're doing a fence removal project, or we're doing whatever that is. We're doing more than just writing a check, and we're showing our commitment is deeper than that, and we're passionate enough to go out and get our hands dirty for the conservation cause as well.
And what I love about this is that, yeah, let's say 21 hours, that can make a big difference, but let's say you get someone out there maybe in the past hasn't been willing to get their hands dirty or do something like that. I think just by giving people a little incentive to get out and do some of these things a little bit more, there seems to be like an exponential factor of growth beyond them, like a ripple effect, where that person realizes, hey, this did make an impact. This is a great thing I can get involved in, and that person influences their network, who influences their network. And I feel like if, more and more companies get involved in things like this, the effect that can have is pretty profound, I feel like. And it's something that, again, like you said, money is, of course, important, but it takes boots on the ground, it takes action, it takes time and energy, and this is a pretty cool way of helping people get that extra nudge that, yes, this is a great thing, and it can benefit all of us, the wildlife habitat, and then also your business in a way too.
Yeah, exactly. I think you make a good point there. I hope that, and time will tell as we get this organization going and we learn, but I hope that 21 hours, once businesses commit to that, I think, and I hope what they'll find is they actually volunteer much more than that. Not even just the ripple effect, but just beyond that,
Yeah, I kind of wish you could have a higher hour count just because 21 hours seems so achievable, but at the same time, it makes a lot of sense. It helps people, it feels achievable so that people want to get involved. And I think once you get that foot in the door, I'm guessing that you will have a lot of organizations and people involved in those organizations who get started and then who just want to do more. So I think that'll be great. And I guess I want to emphasize again, in order for this, at least this is my assumption, you tell me if I'm wrong, but in order for this to work, right, if we explain to a business, hey, if you do this and this, we're going to help you better demonstrate to your consumers and to people out there that you are giving back to conservation, that you do care about these greater things. But the most important onus really is on us as the consumers, because we need to prove this out, right? By saying we, the buyers of products, we do care if X company is actually working toward a larger good. We do care if Y company is giving back their time and money. And the way we do that is by telling them, but then also most importantly, telling them with our wallets, right? We actually need to use this as a part of our consumer choice.
Yeah, that's exactly right. This model is completely reliant on us as sportsmen and women demanding that businesses are involved, right? And we do that by getting active on social media, by talking about conservation, by showing our appreciation for it, but yes, by then purchasing products from companies who do give back to conservation, and that's what makes the circle go around. And you can feel good as a consumer by doing that, because you go out and buy a new bow next year. If you buy a bow from a company that's a member of 2% for conservation, you know that a portion of that sale, of what that check you're writing to the bow shop is going back to a conservation cost.
Yeah. I almost feel like, once this, and I hope and I feel confident that it will, once this gains steam and more companies, get involved, I hope this becomes just a plain out prereq. Like, if you want to be involved in the outdoor hunting and fishing industry, you just have to be part of 2% for conservation, because hunters and anglers demand that the companies that produce their gear also are doing larger positive things to make sure that we can hunt and fish and have wildlife in wild places in the future. I think us as individuals, we need to be doing that too, and I think we should expect the same thing from the companies that are profiting from it too. And by saying that, I'm including myself in that too, right? I run a business in the hunting and fishing world. I too feel like my business and myself should be held to those kinds of standards, and I love the fact that 2% for conservation is a way to do that in a positive way.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree, and I think that's a great vision. I do want to point out to that point, and especially because I used an archery company as an example, is we have a history of doing this as sportsmen, right? The Pittman-Robertson Act, which was voted in by sportsmen and written up by sportsmen in 1937, is exactly that, and on a much higher scale, where I think now it's 11% of guns, ammunition, archery and archery equipment sales go back to funding state fish and wildlife agencies. So that model exists. That model is successful, and it's already embraced by consumers, sportsmen, and by businesses. So, to give archery companies credit, even if they're not members of 2% for conservation, they are already the ones responsible for funding our state and fish and wildlife agencies, right?
Yeah.
So that's really important. I think what's cool about the 2% for conservation model is it takes that same standard and that same philosophy, and it helps us raise money for the NGOs. So whereas the Pittman-Robertson Act is strictly focused on state and federal wildlife management, this is a way for businesses, one, to do a similar thing but help NGOs. And then two, the cool thing about this model is, as a business, you have the choice to invest and contribute your money to whoever you want, where the Pittman-Robertson Act goes into a fund that is then dispersed by the government. And you, as Matthews Archery, when you write that Pittman-Robertson check, you don't necessarily have a say in where it goes, nor does it necessarily help you build your brand. Through 2% for conservation, you can invest it in marketing opportunities with specifically conservation groups that you are passionate about. So there's some cool spins on it from that standpoint.
Yeah, definitely. Now, if I own a business right now and I'm listening to this, what do I do to get my business involved?
So, our website is fishandwildlife.org. So the easiest way to get in contact with us is to go to our website. We have a lot of information that is specifically about the things we've been discussing on this podcast. But you need to get a hold of us, and we need to go through the certification process. And the certification process is so important to our model because it upholds the integrity of what we're doing. That we need to have a serious conversation and a look at who you've contributed to, what those contributions are, what they add up to make sure they truly are 1% of your sales, and then look at your volunteer time and what you're doing, and making sure that there's 21 hours there. And then I guess the caveat that we obviously haven't mentioned, we as an organization need funding as well. That's how it works. And so then there's a membership fee, right? So you get certified, and then you pay an annual membership fee. The membership fee is what we run the overhead for of 2% conservation, and that's essentially your licensing fee to then be a certified member, and then you're able to use the 2% for conservation logo to help promote your commitment back.
Awesome. Now, as I understand it, there's actually a component to this that is relevant not just to businesses but also individuals, which is a pretty unique thing. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So there definitely is. You're exactly correct, and it was one. This component of what we've built into our organization came from direct feedback from Craig Matthews with 1% for the Planet. This is one of those little nuggets of information that we got that was super helpful and informative. And the question I asked him, one of the questions I asked him was, okay, at the time my mind was blowing. I was like, this is amazing. But if you could have done something different, what would it have been? And he said that we would have built in or structured a way for individuals to be involved. And what they had learned from hearsay, right? It's obviously hearsay, but what I understand they learned is as they built this brand, consumers and individuals who weren't necessarily affiliated with any business were so passionate about what they were trying to do as an organization, about 1% of the planet, that they just wanted to be involved. They wanted to help. They wanted to know what they can do, and they didn't really have a mechanism for them to do that. So I took that to heart, and we brainstormed a bunch of different ideas and ways that we felt would be relevant to hunting and fishing conservation, what we were trying to do. And what kept coming up to the surface was, well, there's a ton of people out there that meet our criteria, that volunteer time and contribute money to conservation causes just the way we are asking businesses to do. And then likewise, there are a ton of people who don't. So how can we, one, do the same thing, recognize the people that do, and two, encourage other people who aren't necessarily involved, who are at that stage in their hunting and fishing career where they aren't, where you and I are, like we discussed, ready to give back. How do we encourage them and give them an opportunity to do so? So what we've done is kind of create this individual certification process where if you are an individual who gives back 1% of your time, same 21 hours and 1% of your income, whether you make 20 grand a year or 150 grand a year or whatever it is, if you meet those criteria, then in our mind you are a true conservationist and you deserve recognition for that. And we want to help promote you for what you've done and help leverage that to get more people involved.
So similar process then too. If you do those things, there's a way on the website to start a certification process and move forward.
There is. Yeah. So we're doing the certification process for individuals is a little different. It's not as strict or stringent. It's more on the honor system of yes, I do this, or no, I don't do this, or yes, I want to and will commit to doing this. And it's free. It's not a membership thing. It doesn't necessarily, you don't become a member per se of 2% of conservation, but it's a way for you to certify that I do give back. I am a certified conservationist. I'm doing more than just buying my tags and licenses every year. I'm volunteering for the local chapter of EU, and I am renewing my memberships to all these different organizations every year, and I'm supporting conservation personally. So there's no cost. It's free to get certified. We send you a free sticker that I hope is something that people will be proud to put on their trucks and their coolers or whatever. And then, as we evolve and get more business members, I really hope and envision an opportunity to do, giveaways and promotions and discounts and incentives for these people as a thank you for what they've done and they're giving back. So one of them that I'm working with Sitka right now is can we give away a set of Sitka gear to all of our individually certified members, as a, hey, thank you for doing what you do.
That's awesome.
Here's a cool little promotion. So I think we have a lot of opportunity and things we could do with it as we evolve and grow and learn. But just since we turned the website on live and we kind of launched less than a month ago now, I've been super excited with how many people have come to our website and gotten certified as true conservationists.
That's awesome. Well, I would definitely encourage anyone listening right now to go do that. If you think you already do qualify, go ahead and make sure to submit and do that. But if you don't quite qualify yet, here's your little nudge to make it happen. I personally need to do a little better job on my time, so I'm going to make sure I get that full 21 hours, and I'm excited to be certified from a 2% for conservation standpoint. And I think it's a super cool idea to have this individual option, just to get both businesses and individuals involved in thinking about this kind of thing. It just has a lot of positive ramifications. Now, this is something I was thinking about as you were mentioning this, going back to the business side. How, what happens now? How do you get businesses involved in this? I mean, is it a point where you guys are reaching out and trying to talk to a lot of companies saying, hey, this is something you should be involved in? Or is this something that's kind of dependent on us as consumers going out and talking to our company, to our favorite brands and saying, hey, you got to do this? How does this happen?
Yeah, no, this is where the rubber meets the road, right? All the work is now. We're doing a little bit of all that. So, but primarily, yes, proactively reaching out to businesses and showing them and explaining to them what the model is, and our strategy and our standpoint out of the gate is, okay, let's look at all the companies who we believe are already meeting this criteria, and there's a lot of them, right? There are a lot of companies who give back probably more than 1% of their time and their money. So let's approach those companies first and have a conversation about, hey man, I think this will help you get recognition for what you're doing, and you don't really have to change. You don't have to do anything different. You don't have to change or realign your investment strategy and your marketing strategy. You're already meeting the criteria. This is just a multiplier effect to help leverage that commitment more. So I'm hoping we can knock down some dominoes quickly with that, but and that's going to be very valuable. But the real win then I think will come when companies who aren't necessarily meeting the criteria, who aren't giving back 1% now, start to see that value build with those brands. That's when we will get incremental dollars to conservation. Once those companies start having those conversations internally of hey, look at what such and such brand has done with becoming a member of 2% for conservation. We really want to be involved. We want to be part of that. We need to step up and give more to conservation or get more involved. That's what excites me, and when our model will really be impacting conservation, because then you're getting incremental dollars in, and growing the pie. Yeah. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're reaching out to businesses. We've had some awesome conversations already out of the gate. Personally, for me, because I work at Sitka, and because Sitka has been so helpful in getting this thing off the ground, I really want to get a clothing company on board right away, because I want to show the world that, and I think it'll make a strong message to hunters everywhere and to fishermen everywhere that businesses compete in the marketplace for the products they sell, but there's certain issues like conservation where we aren't competitors, where we're on the same team and we work together on things. So for me, it's going to be really important. I think that it'll make a strong statement to the whole industry that yes, these two brands compete and healthily, and they should try to compete with selling the products in the market. But hey, look, we're on the same team for this. We're both members of 2% for Conservation. We both believe in this cause and are giving back.
Yeah. Well, I can think of some companies like that I sure would think would want to, and I would hope would want to be involved in something like this, in addition to what sounds like some terrific support from Sitka, which I'm excited to hear about. So what can we do, us listening right now, what can we do to help move this cause forward?
Well, it's a great question. I have so many different ideas. I'm trying to quickly prioritize or think in my mind what would be most impactful. But, we're going to leverage part of our campaign as 2% for Conservation. What we use are the money that we get for overhead for outside of administration stuff is to build value and to reach consumers, we, as you used it, to understand more about our model and what we're doing, because we need customers to value this, and that in turn is what's going to build the value for business members. If no consumers recognize our logo, then it doesn't necessarily do a business any good to put it on their packaging or their hang tag. If customers don't understand the philosophy of what we're trying to achieve and the impact that being a member of 2% for Conservation has, then the value is not there for businesses. So we need help. We're going to leverage social media a lot because of the low investment, and we are a pretty lean and frugal organization at this point. So we could use some help, sharing our mission on social media and getting the word out there. The more impressions, the more eyes we can get on our mission and our logo, that's going to be really important in the next 12 months. And then we could use encouragement of the businesses that you support and appreciate, that you think should be members. We want you to tell if your favorite gun company is Kimber, or your favorite clothing company is First Light, or your favorite bow company is Matthews, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We want you to tell your brands how important conservation is to you as a customer, and that you value their commitment and you want them to be involved.
Yeah. I want to make a request. I don't ask a whole lot, but I'm going to ask something of everybody listening right now. And I say this, and I don't take this lightly, because I don't want to bother people with requests like this too often, but because I think this is so important, I want to ask every single one of you. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of you out there listening right now. I want each of you, please think of at least one of your favorite companies. Just pick one to start, at least one of your favorite companies, and email them within the next 2 days about 2% for Conservation. And if every one of the 15,000 of us emails one company today or tomorrow and says, hey, I think you should be involved with 2% for Conservation, that could make a huge difference. Can you imagine if even just 100 companies out of that, of the 15,000 emails or whatever, if just 100 of those companies actually decide to take action on this and give back 1% of their revenue and time, what kind of difference that can make for deer and elk and sheep and ducks and wild places and public lands. I mean, that can make a huge difference. So this is my request, my call to action. All of you right now, you listening, make one email today or tomorrow. Please do that, and I think you could make a big difference just with a simple email, Jeff. Don't you think that'd be a pretty good thing for each one of these people to do?
I love it, man. I love it. I think that that's awesome. That's what we need. We need companies to start hearing from consumers demanding that they give back and get involved.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I'm going to email every one of our Wired to Hunt partners tomorrow and give them a little information about 2% and encourage them to get involved. And hopefully we can start there and keep on spreading the good word, because I think this is a very positive thing for the future of hunting and fishing, to be honest. So I'm curious, Jeff, what's your vision for this 5 years, 10 years down the road from today? What's it look like?
Oh, man. That's fun for me to think about. And, I hope, so for a benchmark, and don't quote me on these numbers, but they're going to be close, but 1% for the planet as a benchmark has over 2,000 member businesses. And through those businesses in their 10 years or 12 years of existence, their claim is that they've funneled over $100 million to environmental causes.
Wow.
Which think about that for a minute. That's awesome. That's staggering. That's huge. Now, what can we do? I think, and this may sound a little pompous of me, but I think as sportsmen and sportswomen, what I've learned working in the hunting industry for the last 7 years is there isn't very many more niche demographics that are more passionate than hunters and fishermen. And that makes me really excited to think about, because I feel like we can achieve those similar metrics, right? I think there's a huge opportunity for what we can do in hunting and fishing. We have a history, hunter and fishermen have a history of taking things next level, owning them, and really making a huge impact. So I think, when not too long ago, maybe 6, I said, man, I'd be stoked to get out of the first 12 months 20 member businesses in the first year, and I think I said 150 individual certifications or something, and I think we could blow that out of the water now, just after having launched for 3 weeks now, and the response we've got. So I'd like to achieve that first. If we can get 20 member businesses in the first year, I'd be stoked. But I think we could kill that and blow that out of the water. And in 5 years, hopefully, 5-10 years, hopefully we're having conversations like 1% of the planet's having now, where we've just had a major impact on conservation.
Yeah, that's awesome. How do you feel? How does this make you feel? You had this idea, you actually took action on it, and now you're sitting here talking about this organization that's launched and that's actually starting to do something that could be really huge and impactful. What does it feel like to be saying these words now that it's actually real?
Well, I'm stoked for the opportunity and to be in the place where we can be talking about it, because there's been 2 years of just behind the scenes work, and so the fun, this is the fun part to me now, to actually get it out and get the word out there and promote it. But to be completely honest, I don't have a lot of confidence yet, just because that's my nature. I know we have a strong model. I know there's everything, all the pieces are there to make it successful, but there's a lot of work to do, man. We have a lot of work to do to make it till we can actually say this has been successful. But I feel super excited and to be at this point now, talking to you and getting the word out to the world about what we're trying to do, because it's been a long road coming of just kind of behind the scenes stuff, getting our ducks in a row.
Yeah, I cannot imagine all the work that's taken to get to this point, and how much more there is to go too. But it's inspiring to me to hear someone like you to go out and do something like this. It's encouraging, and it's great to know that there are people out there who care as much as you do, and who are willing to invest so much of their time and energy into it. And I know there's a lot of people other than you doing similar things, and I think the more we can grow that family of people that care enough to give back, I think it's just going to continue to be incredibly important and fruitful. So for people out there that have wanted to get involved in one way or another with some kind of organization, that want to get back, or who maybe they've had an idea for their own organization, or they wanted to get involved with their another organization out there, do you have any advice for people out there that feel like they have this calling to give back because of how much hunting or fishing is given to them? What would you tell people out there?
Yeah, I mean, just do it. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to try things. If you truly specifically like this situation, have an idea of an organization or a cause or an event or anything that you think can make an impact, consult with people you respect and that are knowledgeable, and try it, make it happen. Don't be afraid just to get your toes in the water and dive in and do it. When it comes to specific volunteerism, one thing that has been a surprise to me over the last couple of weeks of getting this thing off the ground is how many people have emailed about our individual certifications saying, man, I'm a member of all these different organizations, super passionate about conservation, but in my particular area, I just don't know of any volunteer opportunities. And most of these people have come from they live in the Midwest or the East Coast. I think we're fortunate. We take it for granted out west, where there's so much public land and so much wildlife that it's just more abundant to have volunteer opportunities. So I guess where I'm going with that is if you live in one of those areas and you do know of volunteer opportunities, spread the word and get the word out there, because I don't have an answer to that. That's been one of the surprises to me. The questions that have come up, people have emailed saying, "How do you know, what can I do to get involved?" And I'm like, shoot, man, I don't know of anything in Wisconsin, any volunteer opportunities. Let me ask my resources, try to figure out or find out what I could do. But try to network with people that are like-minded like you and help facilitate, getting people involved that are ready to do it but don't know how.
Awesome advice. And I think you make a great point. There probably are a lot of people out there who want to do something but don't necessarily know where the options are. So to your point, work with your network, ask around. There probably are a lot more opportunities than we know about. They're just not well marketed, I suppose, and put out there. So if you do know,
I think
share.
so.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. So, man, this is exciting stuff, Jeff. And as excited as I am, I know you are probably equally excited and terrified for your upcoming trip to Alaska chasing coastal brown bears, and I should let you go and prepare for that. So Jeff, thank you so much for putting your time, energy, and money into doing something like this, and then secondly, thank you for taking the time to chat with us about it and spreading the word.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to get the word out there through your platforms, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your support. I think your idea and your call out to get people to email the companies that they care about, I think that's awesome. I hope all you listening do that.
Yes, absolutely. Again, every one of you, please email at least one company, just one, with a link to 2% for Conservation, and tell them that you think this is something they should get involved in and why it matters to you. And Jeff, what's that URL again?
It is fishandwildlife.org.
Perfect. And they can find you, I imagine, on Facebook as well?
Yep. Facebook is, it's 2% for Conservation. Instagram is, we don't have a lot on there yet, but we're going to get moving on an Instagram strategy, and that'll be 2% for Conservation as well. But yeah, the website is the best resource now, and that's fishandwildlife.org.
Awesome. Well, we will have a link to that on Wired to Hunt as well. And Jeff, I guess until next time, we'll check back in a few years, and hopefully you'll have some great success stories to tell us about the great things that the organizations participating in 2% for Conservation have been able to do, and hopefully you'll have a great bear hunting story to share too.
Heck yeah, man. I hope so. I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. Have a good one, Jeff.
Talk to you later.
So awesome stuff there, don't you think? As you could probably tell, I'm very excited about 2% and the impact I think it can have in the future, and I hope you are too. That said, a few things before we wrap things up. First off, last week we announced a special giveaway in celebration of our 100th episode, and today, right now, we're going to announce the winners. So, our first prize coming from Sick Gear, who is giving away a full early season system that includes an Equinox jacket and pant, their core lightweight long sleeve and bottom, and their hanger gloves and a ball cap, I believe. The winner of the Sitka Gear early season system is Brian Duclos. Brian Duclos, you are the big winner. Congrats, man. Next, we have a prize package from Ozonics, who's giving away one of their new dry wash bags and their kinetic backpack. Two awesome accessories there for your Ozonics machine. The winner of that is Dan Spano. Dan Spano or Spano, you are the winner of the Ozonics prize package. Next, we've got a $50 gift card and t-shirt from Huntera Maps. The winner of that is Wes Cisco. Wes Cisco, you've won the Huntera gift card and t-shirt. And finally, Carbon Express is giving away a package of their Maxima Red Arrows. And the winner of that is Greg Christoffel. Greg Christoffel, you are the winner of the Carbon Express Maxima Red Arrows. I will reach out to all of you guys via Facebook and connect with you to make sure you can get those prizes right away. Thanks for participating, and thank you to all of you who went out there and commented and shared on our 100th episode on Facebook. I hope you enjoyed that episode, and we certainly appreciate you tuning in for it. So with that taken care of, We do now also need to thank our partners who help make this podcast possible. So big thanks to Sitka Gear, Trophy Ridge, Bear Archery, Redneck Blinds, Huntera Maps, Ozonics, Carbon Express, Maven Optics, and the Whitetail Institute of North America. And finally, thank you all for joining us. I hope you were inspired by today's conversation. And don't forget to send that email to your favorite company about 2% for conservation. And finally, until next time, stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Outdoor adventure won't wait for engine problems. Things like hard starts, rough performance, and lost fuel economy are often caused by fuel gum and varnish buildup. Seafoam can help your engine run better and last longer. You simply pour a can into your gas tank. Hunters and anglers rely on Seafoam to keep their engines running the way it should the entire season. So pick up a can of Seafoam today at your local auto parts store or visit seafoamworks.com to learn more.